Yeah. So clearly, the way you break down the customer activity is very interesting, and you talk about the definition of a business model, right? So therefore, the business model. I think you've come up with a very interesting definition where you say model from the customer's point of view and not just about creating and capturing value. So can you walk us through how you define a business model and how is it different when you really capture it through this whole framework of customer value chain?
Sure. So first of all, the vast majority of people that I talk to, very smart people, either students, executives, entrepreneurs, they don't have a clear notion of what a business model is. When you ask them, what is your business model? They generally describe what I call an operating model. The operating model is essentially, what are the activities that you're doing? What are the processes that you're doing? Right. And so uh, many don't have this clear understanding. The most basic and generalizable sense of explaining what a business model is how do you create value and for whom do you create value? And then how do you capture some of this value that you created in the form of profits? And from whom do you capture this value? Right? So in the case of Facebook, of social media, how does Facebook create value? Well, one of it is by creating content, peer-to-peer content, right? And how does it capture value? It captures value from advertisers. It doesn't capture value from the consumers. It captures value from advertisers, and it has a bidding mechanism to make sure it captures the most amount of value, right? So that's kind of the simplest way to explain Facebook's business model. Now, if you want to do firm-centric innovation, you take that approach and you innovate based on what your company wants to do, right? So I want to do this, I want to do that, I want to make more money here. You use the standard definition of a business model innovation, and a business model, and then you innovate on top of that. Now, consumers like you and me, we don't care about what businesses are doing. We care about what problems we need to solve, right? And so I have a bunch of problems in my day-to-day life that I need to solve. And I don't care about the business model of the company. I couldn't care less. Well, we do because we're interested in understanding how to build businesses, but my kids and my wife don't really care, right? And so what they care is they need to solve problems, or they need to acquire goods and services that they desire, and they're looking at what's the best option to do so. And in the process of looking, they're evaluating things from their point of view, not from the company's point of view. So they're looking at what creates more value for me. And so we don't in our house, we don't have cable television because we don't think that creates much value. Having 300 channels, and then you have to be ready at the time that they're going to show the show that you want, and you flip through the channels and you missed it and you forgot about it, and it's a nightmare. And then you have time, but you're not watching anything interesting, and you flip through and you take half an hour and you just give up. Right? That doesn't create value for me. So when streaming came about, it created a huge amount of value for me because I could look at all the shows and then I say, well, now I have the time, I can watch what I want. And so that was an extremely value creating activity for me. And that's how I evaluated streaming, right? And then the capturing aspect, I said, well, I don't care about it. I care about charging. How do they charge me? Well, they charge me a subscription and I can cancel anytime. And I said, that's brilliant. Okay. So now in our household, we've been using Netflix for 10 years or more at least. And to me, Netflix provides so much more value than it charges me. So the difference between how much value it creates for me and it charges me is so big that if Netflix tomorrow said, we're going to double the price because my whole family uses it, I would say, of course, here's more money because it creates so much more value for me. And the cable companies create much less value for me and charge much more. So that's why I'm not a customer, right? So that's the difference, right? So what the big thing that I've learned by visiting all of these startups and advising startups and helping big companies create their own startups and working with my students to create these startups is this. what I've come to realize is that customers disrupt markets. It's not the startup that is disrupting markets, and it's not the technology that is disrupting market. It's the customer who wants something different, changes their behavior, and because startups tend to operate, see it, and build a business model for that need faster. That's why startups are getting so much traction in many markets. But you need to have the customer changing their behavior, right? So when you and I and Vignesh, when we arrive in a new city, in an airport, and instead of getting a taxi, we just call, Ola or Uber or Grab or, any other ride-sharing company. That little decision that we made, multiplied by the millions and millions and millions of occasions of all of these customers that decided that they don't want the taxi experience, that has disrupted these markets around the world. When we decide, instead of owning a second home for us to go for the weekend, just going online and renting somebody else's home, that big activity collectively has made huge disruption in the hospitality industry. So customers disrupt markets.